Hospitals, places of healing and hope, are where we turn to in times of illness and vulnerability. But what began as a routine visit for a minor ailment would lead me down a chilling path, revealing the horrifying secrets that can hide within the sterile walls of a medical facility. As I recount my experience, I hope to shine a light on the dark underbelly of the place we expect to find solace. It was a crisp autumn morning when I arrived at St. Michael's Hospital. The scent of antiseptic and the low hum of machinery greeted me as I walked through the sliding glass doors. I had been suffering from a persistent cough for weeks, and my family doctor had referred me to a specialist for further evaluation. The waiting room was filled with a sense of quiet desperation. Patients, their faces etched with worry, leafed through outdated magazines while the receptionist answered phone calls with practiced efficiency. I took a seat, my anxiety mounting as I waited for my name to be called. Finally, the nurse called my name and I followed her through a labyrinth of sterile hallways to the examination room. The doctor, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, listened attentively as I described my symptoms. He assured me that it was likely a minor respiratory infection and recommended a series of tests to rule out any serious conditions. Over the next few days, I underwent a battery of tests: blood work, chest x-rays, and a CT scan. Each test seemed routine, and I found solace in the fact that I was in capable hands. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to notice something unsettling: a strange pattern in the behavior of the hospital staff. Nurses whispered in hushed tones, their eyes darting around as if they were hiding something. Doctors avoided making eye contact, their interactions with patients curt and devoid of empathy, and the patients themselves seemed subdued, as if they were carrying a heavy burden. One evening, as I lay in my hospital bed, the silence of the ward was shattered by a blood-curdling scream. I jolted upright, my heart pounding as the sound echoed through the corridors. It was a scream filled with pain and terror, a sound that sent a shiver down my spine. I pressed the call button, summoning a nurse to my room. When she arrived, I asked her about the scream, my voice trembling. She avoided my gaze, offering only vague reassurances that it was probably a patient experiencing a nightmare. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it, that the scream had been too real, too raw to be dismissed as a mere nightmare. That night, sleep eluded me as I lay in my hospital bed, my thoughts consumed by the unsettling events that had unfolded. As the days passed, I grew increasingly paranoid. I noticed that the hospital staff seemed to be avoiding me, as if I had become a pariah in their eyes. My meals arrived cold and tasteless, and the medication prescribed to me seemed to have no effect on my symptoms. One night, unable to sleep, I decided to investigate the hospital's history. I scoured the internet for any information about St. Michael's Hospital, and stumbled upon a series of articles detailing a disturbing pattern of patient deaths and mysterious disappearances over the years. The articles painted a chilling picture of a hospital plagued by allegations of medical negligence and unethical practices. Families of deceased patients claimed that their loved ones had entered the hospital for routine procedures and had never returned home. Witnesses spoke of strange occurrences in the dead of night, whispers in empty corridors, shadowy figures lurking in the darkness, and cries of anguish that echoed through the wards. As I delved deeper into the hospital's dark history, I uncovered stories of a mysterious wing that had been closed off to the public for decades. Rumors swirled about experiments conducted on unsuspecting patients, about a hidden agenda that went beyond the realm of medicine. The more I read, the more I became convinced that something sinister was at play within the hospital's walls. It was as if the institution itself was harboring a malevolent presence, one that thrived on the suffering of those who sought refuge within its confines. One evening, as I lay in my hospital bed, a nurse entered my room with a syringe in hand. Her eyes bore into mine, her expression devoid of emotion. "This will help you sleep," she said, her voice a monotone whisper. I hesitated, a wave of unease washing over me, but the exhaustion of sleepless nights had taken its toll, and I allowed her to administer the injection. As the medication coursed through my veins, my eyelids grew heavy, and I slipped into a fitful slumber. What happened next would haunt my nightmares for years to come. In my dream, I found myself in a dimly lit corridor, the walls closing in around me. Whispers filled the air, disembodied voices that seemed to taunt and torment. Shadows danced at the edges of my vision, their forms shifting and contorting. I stumbled forward, the corridor stretching endlessly before me. As I turned a corner, I came face to face with a grotesque figure, a gaunt, emaciated patient with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. He reached out a skeletal hand, his touch like ice against my skin. "Help us," he whispered, his voice a guttural plea. "They keep us here, trapped in the darkness. You must find the truth." I awoke with a start, drenched in sweat, my heart racing. The room was bathed in darkness, the only sound the steady hum of medical equipment. It had been a dream, I told myself, a manifestation of my paranoia and anxiety. But the encounter had felt all too real, the desperation in the patient's eyes haunting me. I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that I was uncovering a dark secret that extended far beyond the hospital's troubled history. Determined to uncover the truth, I began to document my experiences in a journal. I detailed the strange behavior of the hospital staff, the disturbing events that had unfolded, and my research into the hospital's past. It became my lifeline, a way to hold on to my sanity in the face of mounting terror. One night, as I sat in my dimly lit room poring over my journal, I heard footsteps in the hallway. They were soft, barely audible, but they sent a chill down my spine. I held my breath, my heart pounding as the footsteps drew closer. The door to my room creaked open and a figure slipped inside. It was a nurse, her face obscured by a surgical mask. She moved silently, her gloved hands reaching for my journal. Before I could react, she snatched it from my grasp and fled the room. I leaped out of bed, my instincts screaming at me to give chase. But as I stepped into the hallway, I was met with an unsettling sight. The hospital staff, clad in surgical gowns and masks, moving in a procession down the corridor. Their movements were synchronized, their eyes vacant, and they carried my journal with them. They seemed like automatons, driven by some unseen force. I tried to call out to them to demand answers, but they paid me no heed. As they disappeared around a corner, I made a split-second decision to follow them. My footsteps echoed through the empty corridors as I pursued the enigmatic procession. It led me deeper into the heart of the hospital, to a section that I had never seen before, the abandoned wing. The air grew colder, and the dim lighting cast long shadows on the peeling wallpaper. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant sound of dripping water. I could feel a palpable sense of dread in the air, a feeling that I was trespassing into forbidden territory. I rounded a corner, and there before me stood a pair of heavy steel doors. They were marked with faded warnings and symbols that I couldn't decipher. The hospital staff had gathered before the doors, their movements taking on an eerie reverence. One of the staff members, a nurse, stepped forward and placed her hand on the doors. With a slow, deliberate motion, she pushed them open, revealing a scene that would forever haunt my nightmares. Inside the room beyond the doors was a nightmare made manifest. It was a chamber of horrors, a place of unspeakable suffering. Rows of beds lined the room, each occupied by a patient in various states of distress. Some were gaunt and emaciated, their bodies covered in festering sores. Others lay in a catatonic state, their vacant eyes staring into nothingness. The stench of decay hung heavy in the air, and the walls were adorned with crude drawings and writings, the desperate pleas of those who had been imprisoned within. As I stood there, frozen in shock, I realized the horrifying truth. This was the hidden wing of the hospital, the place where patients were subjected to unspeakable experiments and left to suffer in silence. The hospital staff moved among the patients, tending to their needs with an eerie detachment. It was as if they were part of some macabre ritual, a sinister dance of caretakers and the cared for. And then, as if sensing my presence, the nurse who had taken my journal turned to face me. Her eyes, once vacant, now bore into mine with a malevolent intensity. She raised my journal in her gloved hand, and with a chilling smile, she began to tear its pages one by one. Desperation overcame me, and I lunged forward, trying to wrest the journal from her grasp. But she was surprisingly strong, her grip unyielding. It was as if some unseen force was bolstering her strength. With a final triumphant tear, she discarded the ruined journal to the floor, and then with a gesture, she signaled the hospital staff to advance toward me. Their eyes, once vacant, now burned with a sinister intent. I turned and fled, my heart pounding, my breath ragged. The labyrinthine corridors of the abandoned wing seemed to twist and contort, leading me deeper into the heart of the hospital's darkness. I could hear the pursuit behind me, the relentless footsteps of the hospital staff echoing through the corridors. As I rounded a corner, I stumbled upon a room unlike any other. It was a makeshift laboratory, filled with equipment and apparatuses I couldn't begin to comprehend. Tables were strewn with vials of unknown substances, and charts covered the walls, filled with incomprehensible symbols and data. And at the center of it all was a massive, ancient-looking machine, a contraption of metal and wires that seemed both archaic and otherworldly. It emitted a low, ominous hum, and its purpose remained a mystery. I knew I had to find a way out, to escape the clutches of the hospital staff and the horrors of the abandoned wing. With a surge of adrenaline, I pushed forward, my instincts guiding me through the maze of corridors. Finally, I burst through a set of double doors and into the blinding light of day. I had emerged into the hospital's courtyard, a place I had never seen before. It was overgrown with ivy and surrounded by a towering wrought iron fence. I didn't stop running until I reached the hospital's main entrance. The reception area was empty, the staff seemingly absent. I burst through the glass doors and into the daylight, the fresh air filling my lungs as I put as much distance as possible between myself and the hospital. In the days that followed, I reported my harrowing experience to the authorities, sharing every detail of the horrors I had witnessed. Investigators descended upon St. Michael's Hospital, and what they uncovered was beyond comprehension. The hidden wing was indeed a chamber of horrors, a place where patients had been subjected to inhumane experiments and left to suffer in unspeakable conditions. The hospital staff involved had vanished without a trace, their identities shrouded in mystery. As news of the hospital's atrocities spread, it sent shockwaves through the community. Families of missing patients came forward, their voices filled with grief and anger. The hospital's dark history was exposed, and it was a stain on the medical profession that would never be forgotten. I left the city, haunted by the memories of my ordeal, but determined to ensure that the victims of St. Michael's Hospital received justice. The experience had left scars on my soul, a reminder that even in the most trusted of places, darkness can lurk, and horrors can unfold. St. Michael's Hospital would forever be a place of nightmares for me, a chilling reminder that the line between healing and horror can be disturbingly thin. And as I share my story, I hope that it serves as a cautionary tale, a warning that we must remain vigilant, even in the face of the institutions we hold in the highest regard.